Welcome to today's presentation, where I'm going to show you the HR Connect add-in for Microsoft Dynamics. This connector allows you to connect to any external HR system and bring the HR data into Dynamics and create workers, project resources, users, suppliers, and bank accounts, and essentially have the connector create and maintain all of this automatically. For this presentation, I'm going to use the HR system HiveUp, as it's one of the providers that we've been collaborating with to bring this to the market. But as long as you can get a file extract or your HR system has an API, then the connector will work. In HiveUp, I'm just going to go to the report section. So here we go. Go to reports. And for this demonstration, I'm just going to do a full extract. So I'm going to select that. HiveUp does have the functionality to just send you the HR workers, HR records that has been changed or created, so that you don't have to do a full extract every time. That being said, the expense connector can easily handle that. So our file is now saved to our local drive. So I can now go back into Dynamics. And in here, I'll go to the human resource module. So I'm just going to scroll down. Oh, and here you can see we actually have an HR Connect tab in here, which has introduced 3 new areas where we can import the worker records, process them, and also see the records that we have imported. So for now, I'm going to start off with importing this file. Just going to browse, go to my downloads, select that file. And now that it's importing that file, the system will transfer that into a staging table. And at the same time, it's also going to start identifying which legal entities the workers belong to. So let's go into the staging area and have a look at the records. So in this view, we can see the imported records. We can even see what status they're in. So imported just means that the records has been imported into the staging table, but we haven't processed them any further. Status processed means that the records has been created in Dynamics and it's been fully processed. And then we also have an error status if there's been, just in case there's been any issues with processing the records. So all of this looks fine, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start processing the worker records. So selecting that, and this can obviously be set up as a batch so that we don't have to do this manually. It actually just becomes a fully automated functionality. So activating my batch job now. And now the system will apply all of our mapping rules to the records, and it will also look at all of the parameters we set up. So the system will know whether or not to create an associated supplier, whether or not it needs to create the associated bank account, whether or not we need to use, whether or not we need to create it as a project resource, and so on. So let's go and have a look at one of the workers, and we will have a look at the worker Christina, who is a newly created worker in the HR system. So back here in Dynamics, I'm now going to take you through the various areas where Christina has been created. So we'll start off with the employee record. And in here, we can see that Christina has been created. And if I open up Christina, then based on some of the configuration in HR Connect, we should also see some financial dimensions that's associated to her. So we can see that's been assigned correctly, given that Christina is actually a developer. So she's in our IT consultancy practice and associated with the IT department. The employment history has also been updated, so it's in line with when she was employed. And in case she ever gets terminated, then the HR Connect will also update the employment history with that. So just closing this down, and we'll have a look at the expense tab to make sure that her record has been assigned to a worker supplier, so that we can reimburse her for any expenses that she might incur. So let's just have a look. So that is her supplier, which the HR Connect has also created. So I'm just going to close this. And from here, I'm just going to go in and have a look at that supplier. So let's see if we can find Christina. Just going to browse down. And the supplier itself should also have the financial dimensions, which was assigned to her worker record. So we see here, got the same business unit, the same department. In addition to that, let's have a look at the bank account. And here, the system uses a parameterized bank account name. And we can see that her bank account details has also been transferred to the system. So closing that. Then next we'll go and have a look at the project resources to make sure that she is listed as an available resource, so that we can start registering time and expenses against her. So here we go. And I'm just going to scroll down, and there she is. So that means that the system is now ready to register time and expense against her. We can even start including her in scheduling if needed. Then the last thing we need to have a look at is whether or not we have a system user for her. So onto the user list, and if I scroll down, then we can see here that her user has been created. The system will only create a basic user, however it will link it up to the correct legal entity and her worker record. But when it comes to assigning security profiles and enabling the user, this is something you would still have to do. And that's actually the HR Connect shown end to end. Hope you enjoyed it. So now that we have seen how to process worker records from an external HR system, it's now time to dive into some of the underlying configuration and mapping. I'm going to start off with the parameters, and everything sits within the human resource module. And under setup, we're going to start off with the shared parameters. And these parameters, they are global, so they go across all of the legal entities. And in here we now have an HR Connect tab, which I'll open. And right now we have 4 parameters in here, and I'll just talk you through all of them. So the first one, use external employee ID. This is basically a parameter that allows you to define whether or not you want to use the employee ID provided by the external system, or whether or not you want to use a automatically generated ID from a number sequence in Dynamics. So right now we set that to no. Then the use dimension mapper for new workers, that is the auto assignment of a default set of dimensions to the workers, and this is done based on a combination of legal entity and the department that they are working in. We can also choose whether or not we want to create an associated system user. And in case your HR system doesn't have a concept of legal entity, then we've added a feature that allows you to set up mapping rules so you can identify the correct legal entity based on a department, or basically any value you want, because you could just map whatever you want into the department field. Then we'll go on and we'll move on to the legal entity specific parameters. So in the human resources parameters, again, we have an HR Connect tab. And in here, there's quite a few parameters. And if you just start from the left, then if we are creating a vendor bank account, then this field is essentially just the default bank account ID that we're using. We can choose whether or not we want to create the vendor bank account. We can also choose whether or not we want to create a vendor associated with that worker. So if you're not doing any kind of reimbursements out of the system to your employees, then there's no point in creating the vendor. We can also choose whether or not we want to create a project resource associated with the worker. And this resource is just so the worker is there ready for time registration and expense registration. And the automatically created vendor, we can define which vendor group we're using for that. And the last two fields here, that's more to do with which format we're receiving an import file in. So that's the parameters. Then there's a small section of mappings that we set up as well. So on the setup, there's actually an additional HR Connect tab where you'll find the mappings necessary to import the file. And we'll start off with the file mapping. So in here, and this is actually, this table here is what allows us to use the HR Connect against any HR system. And in here, we can just go in and we can define a field name in the source file that we are receiving. And we can point that field name to a target field in our staging table. So this is kind of you set this up once and that's it. And also, an added benefit of the way we are importing these files is that you only have to map the field names that you use, because we have seen some of these HR systems that provides us files that are they have almost like 200 fields, and there's no point in us mapping fields that we don't need. So we have full support for that. Then going to the company mapping. This is the mapping that allows us to map values from the department field to a legal entity. So this is obviously just test data, but once again, if your system or HR system doesn't have a concept of legal entities, then we do have a mapping feature that allows us to derive a legal entity from it. Last but not least, and again, this is legal entity specific. So in GBSI, if we are creating a worker associated with one of these departments, then the system will then assign this default dimension set to them. And that is our quick overview of the parameters and underlying mappings for our HR Connect solution. Hope you all enjoyed it.